Let's get right to look who's here, Fox News contributor and former White House press secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, welcome to the Evening Edit. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, so here's what's going on right now. Democrats said yesterday it's an impeachable offense with the quid pro quo of, basically holding back on military aid to the Ukraine. Now the Democrats are saying it's about asking a foreign leader to look into a political rival. Your take on all of this?
Look, I think that the Democrats have so much egg on their face right now. Frankly, I think that calling for impeachment over this may be one of the dumbest and most embarrassing political moves we've seen. I think it's so bad, and I said this earlier today, I think it's so bad that they may need to file for an in-kind contribution to the president's campaign, because all this is doing is helping get him reelected. It's showing that the Democrats have no real solutions. They're not focused on building the country up, only tearing the president down. I think if you look at the contrast of what has taken place over the last 24 hours, you have the president at the UN General Assembly making a major multi-billion-dollar trade deal with Japan, which will do a vast amount of good for our farmers, for our ranchers here in the United States. And in contrast, you have the Democrats fighting about a foreign leader call in which the foreign leader himself said there was no pressure. I think they look awfully ridiculous, and hopefully this will be one more lesson in teaching them, quit trying to tear the president down. Let's focus on doing some good things for the country, and let's actually get some work done.
But is it right for a president to ask about, a foreign leader to help look into a political rival?
Look, the president was asking to look into corruption. The president talked and campaigned on draining the swamp. He's doing exactly that. The Ukrainian leader had also just campaigned on that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the president having this type of conversation. He put it out there for the whole world to see exactly what the conversation looked like. If anything, Democrats sent a similar letter back in May of 2018 asking Ukraine leadership to do exactly what the president did into looking into corruption. I don't think there's anything wrong with the United States, who gives a significant amount of money to one country, making sure that that money is being well spent and that it's not being improperly spent. I think that's actually the president fulfilling another one of his promises to make sure that we're draining the swamp and using our resources wisely.
So did the president delay about $400 million in military aid to the Ukraine due to corruption or over Biden?
Look, my understanding is that this took place because of corruption, and they were making sure that this money wasn't being misused or mishandled. And I know that they had a lot of problems with that in Ukraine. That's the reason that this person has now become president, is because he campaigned on getting rid of corruption in Ukraine. It's no surprise that the president would want to make sure that money that the United States is sending to another country is being used for what it is being given for. I think that's actually a responsible thing, that the president cares that the money being used for the correct thing.
Wall Street traders are betting that Trump will not be impeached. The fever line is nosediving on that. The president's approval rating is around 45%, according to Real Clear Politics average of polls. The critics are saying the Democrats are trying to push his approval rating down so he doesn't get reelected. Here's another question that came up with the conversation with Ukraine. The conversation between the president and the leader of Ukraine happened a day after Mueller testified to Congress. The president was asking the leader of Ukraine to look into CrowdStrike. That's the cybersecurity firm which concluded Russia had hacked the DNC emails in 2016. Our president asked about a server, whether it holds Hillary's emails, but there is no server involved here. It was a simple hack. Your take on all of this?
Look, the president's concerned about election meddling. He wants to make sure we actually have integrity within our election system. He's actually taken a whole-of-government approach led by the Department of Homeland Security to look at election meddling. Just think, if Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden had taken that same type of whole-of-government approach and been serious about protecting the integrity of our elections, the Mueller situation may have never existed, because we wouldn't be fighting over whether or not Russia interfered in our election. That happened under Obama's watch. Maybe they should have taken that more seriously in the way that this president is, and trying to make sure that we don't have that happen again.
Here's Vice President Michael Pence talking to our own Lou Dobbs, saying the president has been vindicated. Watch this.
As the president said a week ago, he did nothing wrong. The transcript reveals that despite reckless accusations in the media and by Democrats on Capitol Hill that the president had somehow threatened aid to Ukraine to demand a specific act, that it just never happened. The transcript is clear on that point. The ironic thing is the only time it did happen that we know about is when former Vice President Joe Biden threatened over $1 billion in aid to Ukraine in exchange for a specific act. But in this case, the president's been completely vindicated.
And Sarah, along with that, Nancy Pelosi has said, quote, "What's more serious is that he, meaning Trump, he can't win." Alexandria Cortez is saying that it's because of his policies, quote, that he cannot be reelected. Your take on all of that and what you just heard?
Look, this could not be more simple. This is nothing more than the Democrats looking for ways to beat the president. They know that they can't beat him on ideas alone because the American people don't support the far left agenda that has now become the permanent platform of the Democrat Party. So they have to look for how can we tear this president down? How can we tear down everyone around him? And that's exactly what all of this is about. It has nothing to do with good government and real solutions and good policy. This is all about trying to win an election in 2020. And I think the American people are way too smart for the games that the Democrats are going to play. And I think that's why President Trump is going to walk into re-election in November.
Sarah Sanders, great to see you. Come back soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.